Fibermaxxing for 28 days, week one. This almost didn't work. Week one didn't look impressive. If you only care about the outcomes, it would be easy to stop watching right here. I started the week at 173.8 pounds and ended it at 173.2. The 7-day average settled around 173.4. I didn't complete a single planned HIIT session that I talked so much about in the plan video. There's no transformation story here. It's only week one. But week one wasn't designed to prove anything. It was designed to expose friction, and friction showed up almost immediately. Now, let's talk about why a flat scale isn't the story here. The most noticeable change this week wasn't visual or numerical, it was physical. The first few days, I wasn't just full, I was uncomfortably full. Now, keep in mind, this is the month of January that this experiment took place. I'm doing this video and others in the future, and it was the past. Anyways, and the month before, in December, I had done a month of OMAD as an experiment. And I won't have YouTube videos about it, but it was different. And I learned to be comfortable with hunger. And as much as the OMAD people say you get used to it, you kind of do, there's still a lot of hunger. And I think that's true kind of weight loss in general. Like, you have to be comfortable with a little hunger. Hunger is almost your, compass heading saying you're headed in the right direction. You're a little hungry. You're probably losing weight. and this Fibermaxx for me is not about eliminating hunger, because I know that's more or less impossible in a weight loss phase or a cut. It's about making that hunger more tolerable. And anyways, let's get back into it. This wasn't just tolerable hunger, no less hunger from OMAD. This was bloating, pressure, gas, the kind of fullness that makes you wonder if you're doing something wrong, even when the food is quote unquote healthy. That reaction wasn't mysterious. I went from a typical fiber intake I don't know if I have my notes from OMAD, but I was eating some junky junk for my one meal a day, like fried chicken and, going out to fast food and blah, blah, blah. I was eating like I was panicky and needed to get all my favorite foods in, because it was my one meal of the day. And I'm sure it was very, very little fiber per day, like maybe 10 to 15 grams a day. And I went from that and I was like, oh, I've eaten beans in the past. I can eat as much fiber as I want. I jumped from that to 40 grams or more per day, literally overnight. Most people eat half of that, 10 to 15 grams a day, often less. In America, other places, they eat a lot more fiber. Your gut does not adapt this instantly. Mine certainly doesn't. Bacteria populations take a while to shift. When this happens, fermentation up, water gets pulled into the colon to deal with all this fiber because it needs water to help make it pass, and also it just absorbs water. None of this is bad, but it's noticeable. This wasn't a sign that the plan was failing. It was a sign I was just too early to hit the high fiber numbers. Let's go over what I ate and why this matters. When people talk about fiber, it can sound abstract, like a nutrient floating in a spreadsheet. In reality, my meals were pretty repetitive, and that was intentional. Most days were anchored by some variation of a tofu-based salad. And by tofu-based, I mean it just had some tofu chopped into it, but it was that mixed salad greens of the fancy greens that you can get from like Walmart or pretty much any grocery store, with some, extra edamame and maybe some croutons and salad dressing. A bean banana smoothie with flax and fruit, which by itself was like 26 grams of fiber. The salad actually was one of my lower fiber meals that I eventually kind of stopped eating as much because I was chasing the fiber numbers. And then also a vegan chili or a split pea soup, which I have optimized for tons of fiber. Just this small 1 cup would have like 15 grams in it and only like 238 calories, something like that. And it was pre-portioned. I used super cubes to freeze 1 cup portions. And then I would just pop one out, thaw it, sprinkle on a couple croutons, and pound down the 15 grams of fiber. These meals worked for a simple reason. They delivered a lot of fiber with very little decision making. 2 cups of beans plus vegetables can quietly hit 20 grams of fiber before you even think about it. When these meals anchored the day, my appetite was steadier, but also bloating, if you've ever done any kind of fiber stuff, will make you feel uncomfortable and you won't want to eat as much. So hunger goes away and bloating takes its place. And this is the transition into being able to eat more fiber. So the real test of appetite actually wouldn't come until after this passes. That contrast where things start being different happens later on in this challenge. the crunch wrap lesson. Day 2 of my week 1 deserves special attention. I started the day with a Taco Bell breakfast crunch wrap because I was out and about and I just needed to get some food on my way. Of course, the intention was to get my 2 bean burritos, but I got a crunch wrap instead. It was convenient. It was good. It had almost no fiber when I put it into my Fitness Pal later. On paper, it didn't look disastrous, but the rest of the day, calorie wise, but the rest of the day felt off. Hunger came back way earlier than I expected. Cravings showed up faster. And when I tried to compensate later with high fiber foods, I ended up overly full and mentally unsatisfied. This wasn't about calories or macros. It was about sequence. A low fiber first meal didn't just reduce my fullness. It put the entire day into a reactive mode. I was chasing fullness instead of establishing it. And that's when it clicked. Fiber isn't just about daily totals. It needs a job. So let's talk about the magic of fiber and how it's not so magical. Week 1 made something very clear. Fiber is powerful, but fiber is also incomplete. When meals were built around beans, soups, whole foods, appetite regulation came with it. Those meals felt calming. They reduced decision fatigue. They made it easier to stop eating without feeling deprived. But once junky meals entered the picture, because I got bored of things or I was in a rush or whatever, cookies, cake, vegan ice cream, hitting a high fiber target and staying in a calorie deficit became difficult, or I'd have to make a trade-off. My only meal is going to be this whole pint of ice cream and the calories work, so it's okay. It's not impossible. It's just kind of miserable and unsatisfying. You may be full, but if you've ever been full on ice cream for a meal, it's not a satisfied full. It's just there's something in my stomach full. So cravings here, they weren't about scarcity or biology. I had strong cravings this week, and when I gave in, it wasn't casual. It felt urgent. That urgency wasn't hunger. I was often full. It wasn't blood sugar either. Meals were carb heavy, but buffered with fiber. The driver was psychological scarcity. There was a quiet narrative underneath everything. I won't get to eat like this again. This is my normal thing, with OMAD, why every meal had to be a bonanza is because I won't get to eat like this again, and so I better get it all in now. That's pretty much how all my cheat meals or cheat days or whatever go. That thought turns any treat into a last chance. No craving hack that you can think of can fix that or get around it. Nothing breaks through that wall of desire. Not gum, not willpower, not discipline. What fixes it is structure that removes the scarcity. Delay instead of deny. Thank you, Jen Stevens. Sweet foods after savory. High fiber meals. Treats as part of meals, not stand alone. Or what I learned through this thing, finding a high fiber meal that's not too optimized to be super duper healthy, like for instance, a Chipotle burrito, which you can argue one way or the other, but for me, it really kind of scratched that I want to eat something junky itch with I need to hit lots of plants and get my fiber numbers in and be full for a long time. That Chipotle burrito solved a lot of problems. So let's talk about the potato part problem. And remember this whole Fibermaxx 28-day thing, it's not about potatoes. Potatoes, let's give it a quick sidebar. I like potato-based dinners. They're especially the meal I figured out on the potato hack that would bore everybody, but it really worked for me to get me through potato hacks, which I always liked the idea of, but were always very, very difficult for me. And so my way of making it work was simply take the 5 pounds of potatoes and Instapot steam all of them. And then the meal would be about a pound of those potatoes with dips like Dijon mustard or hoisin sauce or even just honey, just whatever. Most of them were pretty sweet. Hoisin is super sweet, high carb, high salt dips, but then I liked it. Simple, satisfying, subjectively seemed to help my sleep. But again, I had those Apple Watch problems, so it's not totally perfect. And this potato kind of hack dinner also seemed to align with my longevity interests and autophagy and lowering the methionine amino acid that's supposed to make it easier to get into autophagy, blah, blah, blah. But this week, this potato thing, it conflicted with my primary objective. Between occasional junk earlier in the day and large potato dinners, my calories drifted up. Not dramatically, but enough to kind of stall progress. The problem wasn't the food, it was the priority conflict. If the main goal is weight loss, every element in the system should be to support that goal, and good tools used at the wrong time still create friction. So weight loss plus autophagy plus aerobic fitness with HIIT, maybe too many goals all in 1 week. So looking back, the mistake is obvious. In 1 week, I tried to do too much. High fiber, early cutoffs, better sleep, autophagy, micro HIIT, weight loss. What actually happened is that one habit consumed all available attention, hitting 40 grams of fiber. Exercise disappeared, sleep data became noisy, calories crept up. None of this is surprising. When everything is a priority, nothing really is. And this is why week 1 almost didn't work. So why did week 1 still matter? What did we learn here? Despite all of that, week 1 was still successful in the way that experiments are supposed to be successful. It showed which meals stabilized my appetite, which meals destabilized it or just left me feeling unsatisfied, even if full. Where scarcity thinking shows up from time to time, and which goals just need to wait for some kind of future experiment. And most importantly, it forced a reset. Weight loss comes first. Everything else supports it or steps aside. What's going to change here in week 2? Week 2 has one focus: appetite dominance. The rule is specific: 20 grams of fiber in the first meal of the day. Let's set the tone here. Not accidentally, not by catching up later, upfront. That means beans for the first meal or something functionally equivalent. It sounds simple, but it isn't. And if appetite is handled early, the rest of the day has a chance to unfold calmly instead of reactively. So in the next video for the week 2 results, I'll walk through what actually happened when I made this change, what worked, what didn't, and why it immediately simplified the entire system. This experiment did not fail in week 1. It almost did. It almost was too much. And I don't usually quit after a week, but still. But it's getting better. So, and again, if you want to see how this plays out in real life, watch the next video. Week 2 begins. The results are all laid out for you. And if you want to follow this experiment step by step or start your own transformation using the same framework, click the link in the description below and get started taking some action today. All right, bye.